Years after his death, the secrets of Rick James' private garage have been exposed, shedding light on the dark underside of the legendary funk musician. But what hidden horrors did James' garage reveal, and how will it change his legacy? Join us to find out. The untold face of Rick James. In the 1990s, Rick James, who was once a shining star in the music world, had fallen into obscurity. The iconic funk musician, known for his electrifying performances and hit songs, was now battling his own demons. His well-known substance problems were no longer secret, but rather front-page news. Rick James was so consumed by hard substances that he confessed to spending a staggering $7,000 per week on it for 5 consecutive years. The once vibrant performer was now being engulfed by a destructive habit that threatened to ruin his life. The public only saw the performer, unaware of the turmoil the man experienced in private. The facade created by the bright stage lights no longer concealed reality. The turn of events in the early 1990s brought about a string of unexpected occurrences that permanently altered the perception of Rick James, the individual whom many believed they were familiar with, yet never truly understood. Rick James and his girlfriend Tanya Hijazi were taken into custody on August 2, 1991. The allegations against them were disturbing and difficult to fathom. Frances Alley, a young woman, claimed that they had confined her for several days, subjected her to intimacy coercion, and inflicted burns on her using a crack pipe during a prolonged period of substance use. What should have been a continuation of Rick James' music career and achievements spiraled into a nightmare of legal scrutiny and court trials. The allegations were serious, including using a dangerous weapon, causing severe harm, committing forcible oral abuse, and false imprisonment. If found guilty on all charges, Rick James could have been in jail for the rest of his life. The idea of the iconic funk artist being in prison permanently surprised his supporters and opponents. Strangely, despite the gravity of the situation, James and Hijazi were set free on bail. A close brush with danger would typically trigger self-reflection and a desire to make positive changes, but for Rick James, it only fueled the turmoil within him. Instead of taking a step back to evaluate his life, he continued to spiral out of control. In November 1992, while he was still out on bail, his problems escalated with the involvement of Mary Sauger, a music executive. A supposed business meeting at the St. James Club in West Hollywood took a dark turn, unfolding into a terrifying ordeal. Sauger recounted being held against her will by a hard substance-fueled Rick James and Tanya Hijazi, enduring a brutal beating that lasted 20 agonizing hours. Once more, the media portrayed Rick James not as a celebrity, but as a troubled individual controlled by inner demons. His downfall was finalized in the mid-1990s after being a former superstar who found himself as a defendant struggling to maintain his freedom. The legal proceedings stretched on before Rick James was found guilty of 2 serious crimes in 1993. Although the torture accusation that could have resulted in a life sentence was dismissed, the repercussions were significant. He received a 5-year prison sentence at Folsom State Prison, but he was released after serving approximately 2 years. Prison served as more than just a form of punishment. It exposed individuals to public shame. The person who once expressed themes of freedom, love, and vitality through his music now found himself confined. Despite being incarcerated, his legal issues continued to haunt him. By 1994, he was defeated in a lawsuit filed by Mary Sauger, resulting in a court order for him to compensate her with approximately $1 million. Additionally, the hotel and a security company associated with the incident were also required to pay significant amounts for their negligence. Rick James was released from prison on August 21, 1996, but his time behind bars had taken a toll on him, leading to a noticeable change in his demeanor from the charismatic performer he once was. He made an attempt to stay out of the spotlight temporarily, but tranquility was always elusive for him. A new accusation emerged in 1998 from a 26-year-old woman alleging violations. Although the charges were eventually dismissed, doubts about his character lingered. Despite the passage of time, his past continued to haunt him with persistent rumors. In 2020, legal trouble resurfaced for Rick James, who had passed away long ago. His estate faced a $50 million lawsuit from a woman who alleged that Rick James violated her when she was 15 in 1979. She stated that the incident occurred while she was living in a group home in Buffalo. However, this case was also eventually thrown out. Even after his death, Rick James continued to be associated with allegations and suffering. In order to get a glimpse of the person beyond the news stories, it is necessary to delve into his background. Rick James did not experience a peaceful upbringing. His early years were marked by violence and hardship. Witnessing his father abuse his mother, he grew up in an environment where breaking the rules was sometimes necessary for survival. In fact, he assisted his mother in running gambling operations in Buffalo in order to make ends meet. The foundation of disorder in his life was established at a young age. Despite his anger and wild behavior, there was a deeper story of a boy who had experienced pain. When he was just 13, Rick James revealed that he had been violated by an older woman who was known to his family. This traumatic event had a lasting impact on him. In the community where he was raised, such issues were never discussed openly. There were no resources or support systems available for reporting abuse. Violence was often seen as the only solution, and keeping quiet was the only defense. The boy who endured these hardships grew up to be a man who expressed his emotions through music and dance, but also struggled with his inner demons in ways that caused chaos in his life. The story of Rick's garage will never be complete if the next act is missed. His life became so terrible at some point. Stay with us. A life in the grip of struggle. Rick James did not start struggling with substance abuse until he was already established as a celebrity. The beginning of his substance use can be traced back to his childhood in Buffalo, New York. From a young age, he was exposed to a lifestyle that included smoking, drinking, and substances as he took his first steps into the music industry. By the time he was a teenager, he was already experimenting with marijuana and heroin. In the late 1960s, hard substances became a major influence in his life. Rick James's connection to substances and music was seamless, with one often fueling the other, creating a harmonious blend. He recalled a time when his mother brought him to watch Etta James sing. After his father left, his mother was left to care for him and his siblings. Witnessing the effect music had on people that night, he also observed the drinking and smoking that accompanied it. The atmosphere of laughter, clinking glasses, cigarette smoke, and marijuana haze all blended in with the music. To young Rick James, it felt as if music and substances were intertwined and inseparable, a single entity. This concept stayed with him throughout his life. During his teenage years, chaos was a constant presence in his life. To avoid being drafted for the Vietnam War, he enlisted in the Navy at a young age, either 14 or 15. Initially, there was a glimmer of hope that the Navy would provide him with guidance and stability. However, this optimism was short-lived. He neglected his reserve duties, went missing for extended periods, and eventually deserted his post. Rather than instilling discipline, his naval experience drove him deeper into turmoil, steering him towards Toronto and away from any semblance of structure. In high school, he was heavily involved in street crime and singing doo-wop, combining music with petty theft, substances, and relationships with women. He quit school at the age of 15. His life was quickly spiraling down a path where music and substance abuse were closely intertwined. In 1978, Rick James gained fame with the launch of his first album, but instead of bringing him out of the darkness, it plunged him deeper into it. Despite becoming a successful star, traveling the globe, selling countless records, and residing in luxury, he still struggled with his demons. He went as far as purchasing the lavish estate that belonged to media mogul William Randolph Hearst. However, his wealth only fueled his vices. What initially started as occasional hard substances experimentation in the 60s and 70s had evolved into an insatiable craving by the 80s. When he tried hard substances in its freebase form for the first time, he experienced an intense sensation akin to fireworks going off within him. The feeling was so powerful that it clouded his judgment. It wasn't just a temporary high, it ended up trapping him in a cycle he could never break free from. Before long, he was burning through $6,000 to $8,000 every week to fuel his addiction. The price wasn't just about money, it also had a physical impact on him. Rick James was discovered unresponsive at his residence in April 1984 and quickly taken to the hospital. The toll of substances and fatigue over the years was starting to take its toll on him. Despite the warnings, he continued on. His health deteriorated in the late 1990s. During a performance at Mile High Stadium in Denver in 1998, he experienced a stroke caused by a burst blood vessel in his neck. The same year, he had to undergo surgery to replace his hip. His body had suffered from years of jumping around on stage, but medical professionals believe his substance abuse had also contributed to the damage. All aspects of his body, his bones, blood, and brain were deteriorating due to his decisions. His personal life was also chaotic. He confessed to leading a lifestyle without boundaries. His frequent substance purchases were accompanied by a continuous rotation of women, never-ending social gatherings, and risky behavior that surprised even his closest companions. Following his mother's death from cancer in 1991, he felt like he had lost his only source of stability. Without her, he spiraled even further. He likened his existence to the most extreme historical debaucheries, viewing himself as someone who had plunged into a realm of excess and brutality, where no action was too outrageous or too immoral. His children, including his daughter Ty James, were also affected by the turmoil. Initially, Ty James was separated from him by her mother, who wanted to shield them from his unpredictable actions. As Rick lived a life of opulence, his children faced hardships in impoverished areas. The contrast between their lifestyles was stark and undeniable. Years passed before they were reunited by chance. Ty could still vividly recall the overwhelming experience of entering her father's luxurious realm. Despite her humble upbringing, she found herself immersed in a world filled with high-end vehicles such as Rolls-Royces, Mercedes, and unique cars like Excaliburs. The sudden transition felt like entering a whole new universe to her. Wealth and luxury were unable to conceal the underlying realities. Ty experienced the shock of discovering unconscious women strewn across the floor the morning after her father's wild parties. It was quite disconcerting for a young child. However, as time passed, it started to feel like a routine occurrence, almost as if her father's lifestyle was the only way things could be. Despite everything that happened, Ty never stopped loving her father. She considered herself to be very close to him. They would spend time together, sharing jokes, having conversations, and just enjoying each other's presence. However, the dynamics of their relationship changed. Ty now took on the role of protector, constantly on guard, keeping a lookout for anyone bringing substances into the house, and trying to shield her father from the temptation he struggled with. However, his addiction caused him to become erratic and risky. There was a moment when Rick impulsively threw something at Ty, causing her to be hospitalized with a severe injury. Despite this, she chose not to distance herself from him. As a young person, she recognized that his behavior stemmed from an illness he was powerless against, rather than pure malice. She chose to forgive him, acknowledging the challenging nature of addiction and its ability to consume both the physical body and the spiritual essence. Rick James stated that his time in prison was the turning point that led him to give up hard substances. However, post-mortem examination showed that there were still remnants of the substance present in his body when he passed away. The final note of Rick James. Rick James experienced a period of disorder, quiet, and dwindling popularity before unexpectedly being thrust back into the limelight. His comeback in 2004 on Chappelle's show, where he was humorously depicted, transformed him into a different type of celebrity. A generation unfamiliar with his music now viewed him as comedic and daring. After a long hiatus, Rick James was once again being recognized and lauded. He even made a comeback on stage at award ceremonies, exciting fans who had never expected to witness his performances again. However, the resurgence did not last long. That year, Rick James's life unexpectedly came to a quiet conclusion. On August 6, 2004, his caregiver discovered him unresponsive in his Los Angeles residence at the Oakwood Toluca Hills apartments near Burbank. He was just 56 at the time. The news of his passing shocked many who found it difficult to accept that the man who had once captivated dance floors with his music and lived an extravagant lifestyle had passed away so suddenly. Initially, there was a sense of bewilderment. The doctor who attended to Rick James clarified that his death was a result of long-standing health issues. His relatives characterized his death as being due to natural causes. Nevertheless, his sudden departure left admirers seeking explanations and eager for insight into his last moments. In the weeks that came after, new information started to come out. It was revealed that Rick James had endured numerous struggles throughout his life. His passing was ultimately due to complications from both lung and heart failure. His health had been deteriorating for years, with diabetes, a stroke, and a heart attack taking their toll on him. He even had to undergo a procedure to have a pacemaker implanted. The body that once dominated stages globally was no longer able to withstand the toll of his previous afflictions. The final statement from the Los Angeles County coroner on September 16th revealed that Rick James passed away due to a heart attack. However, further analysis indicated that there were 9 different substances present in his system. Though individually not lethal, the combination proved fatal. Despite his ongoing struggle with addiction, it continued to haunt him even in death. The global community grieved the loss. Condolences flooded in from colleagues in the music industry, supporters, and devotees. Neil Portnow, head of the Recording Academy, captured the sentiments of numerous individuals by characterizing Rick James as an artist with a distinctive musical style and dynamic presence. He was honored as the funk icon who won a Grammy for his hit song, Super Freak, someone whose musical influence will always be remembered in history. For individuals who admired him, it marked the conclusion of a narrative characterized by moments of genius and suffering. Rick James had experienced fame, endured a period of downfall, and attempted to make a comeback. His existence was chaotic, memorable, and consistently eventful. Yet his passing served as a painful reminder of the sacrifices he made while embracing a life of uninhibited living. Despite going through pain, he lived in music. How? Let's dive into it. From shadows to spotlight. In the 1960s, a restless young man with ambitious dreams and a rebellious nature was on the run from a society that tried to limit him. Known as James Ambrose Johnson Jr., he would later become famous as Rick James. Before he was a cultural icon, before he was on stage under the spotlight, before his music filled the airwaves with funky beats, Rick was just a boy struggling to break free from the burdens of adulthood that weighed him down prematurely. In 1964, he made his way to Toronto with only his love for music and a strong determination to create a new destiny. Shortly after his arrival, he faced an unexpected challenge. 3 intoxicated men tried to harm him outside a club. Just as it seemed he would be overwhelmed, 3 strangers intervened to help him. One of them was Levon Helm, a member of Ronnie Hawkins's band. This encounter altered Rick's course. Helm recognized something special in him and invited him to join their performance that night. Rick took the stage that evening, bearing his soul in front of a crowd of strangers, feeling a sense of belonging for the first time in a while. In order to evade the U.S. military authorities pursuing him for desertion, Rick decided to go by a different name, Ricky James Matthews. He assumed this new identity, but his true passion for music quickly emerged. In 1964, he established the Mina Birds, a group that boldly combined soul, folk, and rock genres. Their music was unrefined, innovative, and vibrant. By 1965, the band was signed to Columbia Records in Canada. They unveiled Mina Bird Hop and Mina Bird Song, showcasing their potential. Various members came and went, including Nick St. Nicholas, who later joined Steppenwolf, and Bruce Palmer, who became a key part of the band alongside Rick. Neil Young became a member of the group during this period, taking the place of a guitarist who was leaving. They traveled to Detroit together, seeking inspiration from Motown. This experience held special significance for Rick, as it provided him the opportunity to meet his idols, Marvin Gaye and Stevie Wonder. Upon introducing himself as Ricky James Matthews, Stevie Wonder jokingly suggested he shorten his name due to its length. As a result, the name Rick James was adopted. However, fate had its own challenges. In 1966, following a heated disagreement in Toronto with the band's manager, Motown uncovered Rick's hidden truth. He had fled from the U.S. Navy. The vision fell apart. Motown urged him to confront his problems and assured him that he would be accepted back once he resolved his legal issues. With some hesitation, Rick turned himself in. At the young age of 19, he was handed a 5-month hard labor sentence. Regardless, his determination could not be confined. In just a short 6 weeks, he broke free from the Brooklyn Naval Brig. He spent months on the run again, but eventually, with the assistance of his mother and his cousin Louis Stokes, who would go on to become a member of Congress, Rick surrendered to authorities. Through the efforts of his legal representatives, his sentence was lessened, and after completing his time behind bars, he was released once more. Despite being marked by past struggles, he did not let it bring him down. By 1973, Rick had inked a deal with A&M Records and dropped his track My Mama, which quickly gained popularity in European nightlife spots. This initial success was just the beginning of his journey, as his true breakthrough moment was yet to come. 3 years later, he made his way back to Buffalo and put together the Stone City Band, a collective that embodied his passionate energy. Collaborating with them, Rick released the hit single Get Up and Dance, which marked the beginning of their rise to even greater achievements. In 1977, Rick James and the Stone City Band were recruited by Motown's Gordy Records. After being rejected in the past, they were now accepted by the same label. The next year, in April 1978, Rick's first solo album, Come Get It, was released. The album was dynamic and emotional, showcasing hits like You and I, his first R&B chart topper, and Mary Jane, which became a timeless favorite. Selling over 1 million copies, the album solidified Rick James' reputation as a powerful presence. In 1979, he released Bustin' Out of L7, which was a successful album followed by Fire It Up. During this time, he also went on his inaugural solo tour featuring Prince and Tina Marie. Rick's performances were not just music shows, they were energetic displays of sound and defiance. He would sometimes light up hard substances on stage, challenging law enforcement, while performing tunes about liberation, passion, and a hint of risk. However, achieving fame is never an easy journey. Despite his 1980 album Garden of Love not reaching the levels of success he anticipated, Rick James remained resilient. He made a strong comeback in 1981 with Street Songs, an album that would ultimately define his career. Combining elements of funk, rock, and new wave, this album was referred to as punk funk by Rick himself. Hits like Ghetto Life, the captivating duet Fire and Desire with Tina Marie, Give It to Me Baby, and his mega hit Super Freak propelled the album to international success. Street Songs sold millions of copies, topping R&B charts and capturing the attention of pop audiences. Finally, Rick James had achieved the recognition he had always aspired to. In the years that came after, there were more successful songs. Throwin' Down in 1982 and Cold Blooded in 1983 both achieved gold status, demonstrating that his popularity was still strong. He was now not just a musical artist, but a representation of funk music itself, untamed, confident, and without remorse. However, even the most confident individuals can be brought down by the passage of time. During the late 1980s and 1990s, Rick faced a series of challenges and difficulties. Nevertheless, in 2004, well after his peak years, he experienced a surprising comeback. When he appeared on Chappelle's show, Rick displayed his wit, charisma, and unwavering authenticity to the world. Through these skits, he re-emerged onto the scene for a new audience. They laughed, but they also recognized that the legacy of this iconic figure continued to endure. This marked his farewell performance, a final gesture that conveyed both strength and emotion.